Manufacturers have over the years been requesting government to ensure that they remain competitive so that they are able to get their products into the market. The problem with this and the challenge that we are seeing in this finance bill is that there are inputs that are used for raw materials.
Revenue maximizing point for spirits at the moment, which is where we were with beer about 4 years ago. And if we don't address that, illicit is going to grow, and the government will have a big headache in terms of controlling illicit products that will come from outside the country and even manufactured illegally within Kenya.
The extension to a 5-day payment timeline still imposes a significant operational cash flow strain on businesses, thus impeding our ability to invest in growth opportunities.
That there is no county that will be having any debt to KEMSA by the end of each month. And therefore, I urge the Treasury to release the funds for the counties, all that is owed to them. And I would ask the KEMSA to check their accounts at the end of the month when that money has been released.
You cannot have authentic results from these independent variables.
How will you know the poverty index of county X, Y, and Z? I know you want to tell us maybe about KNBS, which is not neither here or there. The NHIF, how?
A student in band 1, 569 in number, applied to be considered to be moved. Of course, they know they're in band 1, to be moved. What does that say? All that those students are saying is that 5% they cannot afford. How can they be assisted?
Taxes on so many things at one time. You are not doing justice to the economy. One, you are causing hemorrhage. You are hurting, you are injuring private consumption. And you know what? If we don't consume, people cannot produce.
Finance bill is for all Kenyans. Whatever name you are giving them, that name you are giving them, they are Kenyans, and we think they should all be accepted to deliver their memorandum because they are Kenyans, they have interest. Finance bill is going to be for them, and it will benefit them, and will benefit all Kenyans.
A repositioned partnership between Korea and Africa must be intentional in harnessing the potential of the fourth industrial revolution. Without a doubt, Korea's impressive advancement of ICT, and especially in the fields of robotics, biotechnology, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing, can enhance Africa's capacity to undertake successful economic transformation.
All right, you get a different feel of what is happening as far as finance bill is concerned, also concerns from academia with the university modeling financing model, the current one that is also sparking a lot of debate, and also the cash crunch that is being or affecting the university currently, where they are in distress. And we'll talk about that also with the panelists much later. And of course, also sentiments from Korea there with our president. But also still on finance bill, we have engineers who are voicing their concern. The Institution of Engineers of Kenya, they voiced their concern on the finance bill 2024, specifically in the clauses that touch on the sectors of construction, engineering, manufacturing, and motor vehicle. While submitting to the Parliamentary Committee on Finance, the Institute's President, Shama Kiteme, called on the government to consider their proposed amendments to the bill, noting that they are crucial for ensuring economic stability, encouraging investments, and promoting sustainable development in the country. Let's listen in.
Some of the proposals we have given are aimed at improving the business environment. We are encouraging manufacturing, and we are proposing tax exemptions on the implements that are going to help manufacturing possible. We're very strong on encouraging industrialization, because when we build industries, then we create employment opportunities, and we encourage the growth of our economy. We are focused also on the issue of taxes being imposed on the housing fund, and we have had a conversation with MPs that, in our view, this is going to suppress the construction industry. We're also encouraging taxes being imposed on construction materials to be waived. because this is going to create an enabling environment where we are going to have a vibrant construction industry. Now, when we have a vibrant construction industry, we have our economy growing, we have employment opportunities created for engineers, for technicians, for technologists, and we believe this is good.
All right, voices and many voices regarding the finance bill. Which way to go right now? You have a handy opportunity, you as a citizen also, to weigh in. The public participation is ongoing. Remember also the days are ticking and peeling away from the calendar, so make sure you take advantage of that so you can also share your sentiments. You can also share your contributions as well. And you can see that will be also a big ticket issue in Parliament, especially right now that we have the debate on the split in the UDA, as you can see it here with the Deputy President being crowned, or is he the kingpin of Mount Kenya? It seems this crown is not on his head, but is it trying to stifle his...
Right. Two per two.
And you can see also the hands there. He's indicating tawe. I don't know if it's a tawe, but there is no. There is the friction there, and there is also a wide chasm that is developing right now in the UDA party. Some of them have indicated they are going to, right? Is it ship off? Right? Ship in or ship out? What is actually that particular slogan? I've forgotten, right?
Ship
up or ship out, yes.
Ship out, yeah.
So some of them will be actually making, or they'll be getting their own party as it is right now. This is the current state of play. We want just to focus on this because I think this is a big ticket issue. And we'll begin with engineer's voice because we have engineer Patrick Obath here. We were expecting to see your voice, you lending your voice there. Huh? Don't tell us you're in Malaysia and Singapore.
Engineers are engineers. We have a spokesman speaking. So,
but you know, when you have the spokesman speaking, also you have people now who are flanking him behind. You know, just making sure they have that particular camera moment, where they're captured.
Yes, that's it.
Right.
But I mean, if my biggest concern on some of the input taxes that the engineers are concerned about is, you will find the construction industry beginning to take shortcuts. And when that happens, you have buildings coming down, right? And you see, you know, whenever you see this kind of thing, and I remember when you saw buildings coming down over a period of time, I think about 10 years ago, it was all around the attack on the cost of materials. And here we are going exactly the same way. This import, this import levy that they're putting on things like clinker, water and everything else to try and encourage local production, right? You don't stop things coming in to encourage local production. You invest and make it cheaper to produce locally, right? I mean, taxing to prevent imports is the wrong way. But giving levies and giving reliefs to make it possible to produce locally is the best way to go. And the concern around the issue of manufacturing and construction and everything else is absolutely because of that. How can we manufacture when the costs that we are going to have to meet to manufacture are going through the roof? That is the simple thing. So engineers are saying we're not going to get jobs. We're not going to be able to work because all these things are not going to happen. And I have a relative of mine in the US who says, Kenyans must invest in the US and everything else. And I told him, Kenyans are never going to invest in the US. Kenya is a producing country. It is not an investing country. It needs investments to come into Kenya for Kenya to produce. But if we are going to become a country that produces, we've got to enable internally the opportunity to begin producing. And that production is two things. One is getting the basic resources for production. So the agricultural opportunity that we have in Kenya, whatever few minerals and stuff that we have in Kenya, which everybody's trying to corral into their own corner at the moment, all those, if we are able to turn them into viable products through manufacturing, through value addition and everything else, then the country will grow. But if you begin to put barriers through taxation on the opportunity to invest and convert locally, then this country is not going to grow. And as Jim said, the issue of our expenditure needs to be looked at. We should not be putting taxes in because we are spending more. We should, like any corporate organization that has got their mind in the right place, if the going gets tough, look at your costs. You never try and go to the market to try and raise more money. Look at your costs, become more efficient. Cut down what you don't need and cut the cloth to suit the size of the person that you have.
Precisely.
Right? Don't try and sort of, bring in more cloth and say, I'm going to cover myself because I'm growing bigger. No, it doesn't happen that way. So I share the concern that Kenyans have about the current Finance Act or Finance Bill that is going in. The government needs to focus on getting slim, not fleecing wananchi, who are already sort of very, very burdened by this tax. Yeah, and what has happened? People have stopped talking about the hustler fund. I'm sure the default rate has gone through the roof. And that's why everybody has gone so quiet.
On the default of the hustler fund.
Yes, it's gone through the roof because the cost of living has just gone impossible. So people are actually borrowing from the hustler fund, not to invest or to sort of become productive. They're using it more as a loan to live. And the default rates are going up and up and up and up.
This
and
is it.
All these indicators,
Loan defaults,
all these indicators that are coming through should be a screaming thing to the people who are looking at crafting the finance bill in the country, that we are going the wrong way.
Right. Let's leave it at that so that also I can sort out your mic, which is crackling on air a bit, as we pick the brains on the Professor Mwenje here. Still on that, the high default 18-year high. I think people are now bearing the brunt of the high interest rates in this country, despite the fact that we have the MPC now maintaining at 13%. We'll go back to that debate of capping the interest rate at some point, because now I think we've been given leeway, or they have been given leeway. They can go to as high as they want, as it is, and this is adversely affecting wananchi. This should be indicative that we should get away from the GDP, that we've been talking a good game about it here as a measure of or indicator of the country that is doing very well.
I've told you to show you what it means. And I'll share with you one day. There's a map here of the world.
Yes.
Shows you growth in GDP. Kawaida. In Africa is all green. And next map by MF, which now shows the real per capita input, inflation, input population, all those countries which were green, they are red. Same GDP, but how you look at it. I'll send it to you. I have it here. I'll send it to you.
Right.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. You have one map here of the world, and it shows the country in the world which are doing well in the GDP.
Yeah.
They are green. 90% except Sudan in Africa. They're all green, showing they're doing well. The same, it now talks about the real GDP per capita and all that. All those countries which were green are now red. The countries which were red in area, they are all green.
And
so what does that indicate?
That's a difference between growth and development.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, what you're looking at here is growth without development.
Correct. Correct.
Your GDP is rising, but the living standards of the population is lower. There is more pressure on anybody else than at any time. And therefore, the IMF will be coming telling you, oh, you guys are 5.6, 5.5. But then if you look at how that money is distributed across the entire population, you don't see it because the majority of the people are poor.
Yeah.
And that's why you end up with growth without development. That's why GDP is never a good measure of development in any country.
It's not.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about what's happening now in the finance bill 2020. But from outside looking in, you remember the 1980s and 90s, the special adjustment programs, because we're exactly where we were in the 1980s and 1990s.
You got it. You got it.
Now, there are three things we need to look at. And as we look at the context of the entire finance bill, because the drafting of this, and I'm sure the people who are drafting this, in their own private moments, are also saying, bwana hapa, imekuwa kitu ingine, lakini we have to go through this. Okay? And that's a problem we're having. I'm sure they're having those private conversations among themselves. One, there are three impacts those special programs and the conditionalities that IMF and World Bank have on countries. One, the economic impact. We have to separate the economic impact from everything else and see how is this affecting our economic impact. You remember there was a statement that was made by I think it was IMF some time back that as we aspire as a country to achieve our medium-term conditions,
right,
we are sacrificing the medium-term development for the country, which actually does happen, and it has happened in so many countries. So if you look at the economic impact, the austerity measures that we are trying to look at, the problem with that is, as we start cutting here and cutting there and cutting here and trying to look at where we're going to tax more, and first of all, there is no country in the world that has ever developed out of taxation. Okay? It doesn't happen. It has never happened. So what we have to look at is really a tax regime that encourages production, that encourages more people coming from the lower class to the middle class. And that's where China realized in 2015, I think we discussed this with you some time back.
Yes,
if you look at GDP of China, in 2005, it was $6.7 trillion. 13 years later, it was 13 trillion. It doubled in 10 years later in 2015. It doubled in 10 years. Why did that happen? A classical example of bottom up. They had more people move from the poor to the middle, that we had more people paying taxes rather than taxing more of a smaller number of people. So what we need to do is to bring more people. Unfortunately, it is not politically expedient to be able, because it takes time. It takes long-term planning for us to be able to do that. Now, what the Chinese government realized at that time, they look at the US, and the US then they said, America today, even if the rest of the world is in a depression, America can still move on. We had 67 to 75 million people within the baby boom generation in the middle who could continue to consume. Now, with that, the Chinese realized we need between 350 to 500 million people in the middle class in order for China to maintain itself. And what they have done now is the middle class as within China can be able to be, the country is very busy producing for itself. Okay, now,
I like that. It's busy producing
for itself.
Absolutely.
And if you're not producing for ourselves, we become what, and by the way, I listened to Honorable Didi Nyoro the other day on Citizen, and I was a bit concerned, and I think some people should have mentioned that. He said our agricultural contribution from agriculture sector has moved from 23 or 25% to 19%. Manufacturing has stayed at 18%. The service has taken 65%. What does that tell us? We are going to be caught in a middle income trap where we prematurely become a service industry, a service-led economy.
That's what we are. That's what we are.
And we cannot be there. Otherwise, we'll never be able to develop as a country. You have to produce stuff. You have to produce things that create jobs, the multiplier effect. When you are so busy providing service to each other, I'm selling him something that is not adding value. He buys from me, he sells to Prof buys and sells. We are not producing anything, we are not adding any value.
But if we look at even the production or the agricultural sector, how much does the government also dedicates in its budgetary allocation to agriculture?
That's
in comparison to what it does to the GDP.
That's where the problem is.
Indeed.
Yeah. The problem is we should be investing more on agriculture than probably any other sector. Yeah. The Vietnamese realized that, and for 20 years, they were able to focus on agri. Yeah. Then the next 20 years, from 1980 to about 1995, it was agriculture. Then from 95 to around 2014, 2013, it was industrialization. You have to have a base.
People must eat first so that they go to the industry.
But once you have fed your people, the rest will take care of itself.
No, but I must, I question this, because I feel, what do we mean by the government spending money on agriculture? Is agriculture a business, or it's a pastime, or what is it?
Agriculture is a business.
Is it part of the civil service?
I can't group with that. I think it's beyond what you're saying. It's everything.
Well, you see, the only thing is, first of all, I doubt the numbers, okay? Because, the percentage of GDP, okay, that manufacturing has in Kenya is 7%. It's not 19%.
It's not 19%, yeah.
And agriculture is still 30%, actually. People will talk about it 18%, but in reality it's... But you see, I feel, all the time, this is part of the thinking that we indulge in Kenya. Because I've always had an argument, look, if you let's take the whole world, okay? Do people make money out of agriculture? Brazil, it's the largest producer of coffee in the world, okay? Their agriculture is the best in the world. In fact, there's a guy who runs Brazaf here in Kenya. And when he tells the people in Brazil, look, they sell maize for 3,000 shillings a bag in Kenya, they say, hey, where's this country? I want to go there. And, why? Because that's 3 times the price that they sell it in Brazil. Now, why do we have the government having to spend money, give money to farmers who are meant to be in a business? The problem is the farmers misuse the money. And they don't repay loans. We've had the president up in Bungoma. Yeah, we're gonna write off all these loans. Now,
but I think there's a narrative here you need to perhaps step back and look at. And fundamentally, no nation will even progress in industrial if it doesn't feed its people. To me, that is very basic.
But why is it that our farmers? They sell their stuff.
Let's not mix inefficiency in production of the farmers with the narrative why we should be more producing more agriculture.
Who's going to produce if it's not the farmers?
No.
I think let me jump in on this because if you look at Brazil and you look at sugar, for example, they grow sugar cane not because of sugar, they grow it because of alcohol.
Yeah,
and these are large state and businesses. It's set for state corporations. We started the sugar because they wanted to start making alcohol to drive cars, right? So the state invested first. Then private sector came in and took over everything. And right now the state is completely out of that place. It is running by itself. The same thing with chickens. It is cheaper to import a chicken from Brazil into Kenya than to produce it in Kenya, despite the whatever it is coming all the way around. It's because you get economies of scale. If you look at Kenya, where is everything happening? It's happening on a 50-kilometer strip either side of the Nairobi-Busia Road. That's where everything is happening. The rest of the country, zero. Nothing's happening there. We need, and this is where the long-term view on the government, as Prof says, long-term view, we've got to say, we've got all these other assets in the country that are lying idle. How can you get it to work? The work on the water towers, which are feeding those areas which are semi-arid, that needs to happen.
It's an entire ecosystem.
It's a whole ecosystem. Tell me any developed country. Tell me any country in the world developed which imports food. Give me one.
Singapore.
Singapore has no land.
They have no land.
It has no land.
You've asked me a question.
It's a rock.
Think about it, the ecosystem is Malaysia.
It's a fundamental McPhee.
I've got a past student, Isaac Njuguna. Okay, he is in the egg business. Okay, now he actually showed me. He came to me one day. Okay, and he showed me. Look, these are all the raw inputs I have. Every item he buys from Uganda, except lime from Koru. Now, why is it that Uganda can produce everything more cheaply than Kenya. Why?
Tax.
Okay.
Certain and Museveni said that, you know, the last 2 months.
Museveni is a hell of a good president, to my mind.
I'm coming there. The last 2 weeks we had a very interesting discussion. There was a World Bank. Yeah. They held their annual meeting here in Nairobi. Yes. Then the African Development last week. Yeah. And Museveni made about 4 points in that meeting, and he didn't mince his word. He didn't mince his word, actually. He told of the guy of the World Bank off.
Exactly.
And he said, he started, I get worried when my central bank governor tells me there's enough resource for imports. You hear the statement? There's enough reserve for imports. So they're all geared to imports. But he said, what perhaps we need to do, when is the last time you had the Bretton Woods investing in railway? Except now the one which we built, 1990, whatever. When is the last time you had these people funding irrigation?
They will not.
Yeah. When is the last time that they irrigate in power?
They don't.
So that manufacturer can come down. And above all this nonsense that we must be importing, we need to export. And he has given 4 examples. We're talking about the chicken. Why the chicken, and I think my brother has pointed out, look at the internal efficiency in this country. If I'm going to produce, and they came very clearly, if I'm going to produce and actually there's no taxation, I'm not going to. We have a very interesting discussion on Tuesday this week, and asked, most people now are going to cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, most people are moving now to cash.
They're going away from M-Pesa.
Yeah, because if you come from, and the opportunity is there, the government can go in terms of taxation horizontally. Don't tax the few you have so hard. So what I will find is, I'll find ways of not to pay tax.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on.
And as we come to that, let me go back to agriculture, because I'm in that space. Right now in Ethiopia, I'm in the same space. We are putting food production systems funded by the UN and other folks in some of the areas that have not traditionally grown food.
Grown food, yeah, exactly.
Okay?
In Ethiopia?
In Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Because we are going to a place where they have never farmed. But you people all over the place are hungry.
Yeah.
So the question is, you have the land, you have the resources, you have water, you have perennial rivers. Why is there no food production? And that's where now deliberate investment comes in.
Yeah. Very deliberate.
It has to be very deliberate, and it has to be focused. Are we focusing, first of all, on feeding people? Yes, people get fed. Next, cash crops. Which cash crops are we going to do that are best, and where is the market for these cash crops?
And they feed also to the industry.
And then it feeds also the industry.
Right.
So agriculture becomes the base for economic takeoff.
I like that word, takeoff.
Yeah. And if we don't do that, because if you look, agriculture touches on everything.
Everything.
Okay? First of all, you never see a country that has not fed itself developing. It never happens. People are too busy trying to figure out what they're going to eat today and tomorrow to even think about education with their children. And I give people an example of that woman in Turkana who sits and is looking in the horizon, waiting for a truck, to see dust of a truck coming to bring in food. You cannot tell that mother about the importance of that child's, her baby's education or health or anything else. That mother is worried about this kid surviving from today to tomorrow because it needs to be fed. But once that child is fed and that family is fed and has food, this mother has time to think about, now my kid needs to be healthy, so I choose the food that we are going to
and
have.
Prof, you're right.
And education at the same time.
Yeah, you're right, Prof.
So we can never develop as a country.
We did that in Nyeri, and it was very interesting in Nyeri when I was on the other side working in the education sector. And we asked the community, why are you taking the kid to go to the coffee farm instead of to school? And he said, we need food in the evening.
Absolutely.
And he was telling, we need food in the evening. But then when you're in Ethiopia again or somewhere talking about agriculture, get that record of We Are the World. You remember?
Yeah.
Play somewhere.
Yeah.
It tells you about the developing economies and us and food.
Okay, let me tell you something else also. For the last 3 years, ourselves and a group of Germans, we've been doing research in Nairobi, Cape Town, and Ouagadougou. Unfortunately, Ouagadougou, the coup happened, and then we had to stop.
You had to pull up.
In Burkina Faso. Now, it's on urban and peri-urban food production systems. Because there are people in urban areas that are poor, and they don't have food. So with that, after conclusion, then we can be able to go to any city, and we are able to tell the folks in the city, here is a food production system we can adapt, and especially for the informal settlements. And so that you can be able to grow your own food. You can be able to do X, Y, Z. And that has to be a social investment first before it becomes sustainable.
But
Okay?
I'd like to take all of us back to the time when Kenya had two organizations, beginning with A, agriculture. There was the Agricultural Finance Corporation, which still exists, and then there's the Agricultural Development Corporation, right? One had money, the other had land.
Yes.
And if those two had done what they were designed for,
food secure.
we wouldn't be talking what you're talking about today.
Absolutely.
We'd be food secure, right? Somebody then had a vision for this country to say, let's finance, let's have land, and they had large tracts of land. Where are those tracts of land? Look at all the rich Kenyans now. They own land in those places, right? And even as recently as with the previous government, this thing in Tana River, yeah? Is it Kulalu?
Kulalu.
Yeah.
The million acres.
Yeah.
Galama Kulalu, yes.
We are just inept at converting this massive piece of land with water and everything else into a productive unit. And that, the idea was there. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
You know, large, you know, use the money, put infrastructure to put whatever it is, to put water into that place, divide it up into large tracts, get private sector to come in, you put the infrastructure, get them to come in and get them produced.
So it has to be deliberate.
It has to be
and
deliberate.
very methodical. Let me go back to the second part of, remember the structural program that we are talking about, IMF. And so economic impact. We have seen it's been historically negative throughout, from the 1980s, whatever. The other one is social impact.
Yeah.
Okay? Right now, health system is in crisis. Our education system is in crisis. Special needs and welfare programs are also, because they are affected by this finance bill and the previous finance bill and what is happening now to our the impact. Education. I was part of the original CBC National Steering Committee. I was appointed by Matiang'i in 2016. And I told them then, the biggest problem we're going to have 8 years from now when transition from grade 6 to grade 7 is JSS. I chaired the subcommittee on resource mobilization. We costed it at 643 billion in 2016, 2017. The same cost that was done last year, almost the same cost. It was 6 point something billion. Now, I was in my home county the other day looking at education and where we are in Kiambu. And other counties as well. JSS, we still don't know where the junior secondary is going to be. Is it primary school or secondary school? And this is a problem that even Ruto inherited from Uhuru's time.
Right.
But it was never addressed then, so it's a problem now. So what we are going to do and we're doing now, we are sacrificing 2 generations of our children. Those who are in grade 7 today, especially when it comes to the sciences, we still are not quite sure where they're going to be. It's not funded, it's underfunded, there are no teachers. We have teachers in JSS who are teaching chemistry and they did history because they are simply not teachers. We have primary schools that don't have labs, but they're still supposed to be teaching chemistry,
physics,
biology, and physics for these kids to figure out which pathway they're going to go in the next 2 years. When are they going to catch up so that those who are going to STEM in grade 10, 11, and 12 are able to be identified at grade 7, 8, and 9. So those kids are going to be lost in the process. The kids who are in grade started 6 today or grade 6, they're coming in next year now to grade 7. These guys are going to grade 8 in the middle school, we're still not quite sure where we're headed. And that's why some of these programs that are being cut with the current finance bill as a result of the IMF World Bank austerity measures are really affecting negatively our children, and those generations are going to be lost. The third one is the political impact. Those conditionalities take the power of our political decisions away from them, where we almost become mechanical because we have to do X, Y, Z. It doesn't really matter. And that's why I said, even the people who are drafting this bill, even those folks at the Treasury probably when they're discussing this, when they go home, they're going to see it. Yeah. Man, what are we doing? Damn. But they have to do it. They don't have a choice. So we really have to think as a country whether these three impacts are negatively affecting our country and which way are we supposed to go.
And that's way,
everybody else.
That way to go, and I like the way he has brought his narrative. Was the genesis, was the birth of Vision 2030. If you go back to the Vision 2030, it's basically on the three things he has pointed out. It looked at the economic. What do we need to do? Add value to our product and services. For sustain. We must add value. You don't just take coffee as coffee beans or cocoa. And that's the economic pillar we are talking about. Agriculture was in the center of the economic pillar. About 7 sectors. Business outsourcing, manufacturing. Now there's brew economy, there are about 9. Then the social. The whole idea of education system. The whole idea of health. And education system, by the way, it never brought things of that curriculum. I mean, the university now preparing, or the committee university trying to prepare for the CBC when they come to the university. But that was now looking at the social. What do you look at health? How do you look at education? How do you do social protection? Because there are still people perhaps who need some safety nets. And very interesting, in those safety nets, how do you see them graduating less and less every year? We have a government which feels that every year we are giving more for social protection. Ideally, like Brazil, moved 28 million people, familia bora, from poverty to where they can sustain them. And thirdly,
they call it familia bora.
Yeah, familia bora.
Familia bora.
And thirdly, is what you have, the political.
Is bora Portuguese?
That's the third one. So you're looking at the economic, social, and political. That leadership, that direction we must be. I'm very intentional of this country, and it was very intentional. By 2030, is where I want to be. This is the journey.
But what's the efficacy of Vision 2030? Because I think also, was it yesterday they were unveiling their, is it their third MTP, the medium-term plan?
The fourth one.
The fourth MTP, yeah. But I'd like to jump in before we go there. I lived in Malaysia from early to mid-90s. And that was when they did
their homecoming, right?
Yeah, it was homecoming. and they had this thing they called Wawasan Duoplo Duoplo. Wawasan Duoplo Duoplo, which is basically Vision 2020.
Yep. Right.
Right?
Okay.
And they had it at that time, and they followed it ruthlessly. And one Mahathir Mohamad, who was then the Prime Minister of the country, he sort of told countries like the UK, they were building dams. And I think his son got a contract. The consortium where his son was involved won the contract. And then the Prime Minister of the UK says that this is corruption. And he just stood back and said, listen, this is money that you give us. Yes. We followed the procedures that you gave us in terms of tenders. In fact, it was done by your people who actually supervised that thing. The fact that he's my son is irrelevant. He participated and won fairly as a Malaysian. So if that is the way you want, we are going to stop all British companies from coming into this country. And they did. And the foreign minister was on the next plane coming to Malaysia. Now, Vision 2030 in Kenya, who has followed it ruthlessly from the time it was put in place? I think the first year or two, in terms of just getting it into people's minds and everything else, the leadership of the country was involved.
Yeah, Kibaki was very
100%.
much. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And pushed and pushed and pushed. And it was talked about, and it became something that me and you are talking about every day.
Yep.
Come the next government, started going down.
Discipline.
Yeah.
Generational
Discipline.
discipline.
Generational discipline. We just lost it at that point. Because if that high level of state commitment to the implementation of Vision 2030 had been there continuously up to now.
He was in the boat and very supportive of people.
No, we would be in a different place completely. We wouldn't be talking the way we're talking here today.
Yeah.
Right? Right. And it was a well-crafted vision. It had all the elements that are required. And if you had just done even 50% of it.
What is it, Dubai, you want to ask about?
Yes, 50%.
I can see you looking at me.
So the issue of focused leadership and moving from one generation to the next is key. Not my legacy project, my legacy this, my legacy that as a leader. It has to be the legacy of the country.
I'm looking straight in there. Continue.
Professor, you know why I'm looking at you. Because when you talk about Vision 2030, you can listen to what Patrick Obath is saying. You are the former DG of Director General of Vision 2030. Right. So was there any lack of focus during your term?
And I think we are talking about focus a little bit about
I know in the apparatus, but I'm saying this with my family in cheek as well.
That question,
are we having the true north with the
that question should actually be answered by the board member. Because me, I was just a CEO. But having said that, I think and he's right. That thing of Brazil is called familia bola. That's what it's called. It's a very good social protection, perhaps the best in the world. We dropped the ball after 2013. And I think squarely the leadership then really dropped it. It was very focused. And I do remember with the rota I shared here, the Francis Mudaura, such a gentleman. Francis we would have, every month we have a board meeting, if not twice. And we'll meet at 9, and if like 5, we would have lunch. But what he did, all these things and say, we need to do this. Then the PSs are there, and the PSs used to attend. And then we were told, go and do that. The letter will be in a desk on Monday. You know how government works. There must be a letter. And that's how it moved. Then he knew I need people who can think, I need who are deliberate what we should be. So there was NESC. National Economic and Social Council. These are people who think. And they brought very deliberate people. The guy from South Korea, Dede Choka, the guy from David Ko from Singapore. People who have seen it, they have grown. So they think through. They say this is what you need to do. Then you had now the implementation, the delivery unit. So it was very clear. But there are reasons why, which were very, I think the Kenya Uhuru regime, he didn't have a good rapport with the NESC. Because he was supposed to be chairing, he never showed up.
He killed NESC actually.
But was there any NESC?
He killed it.
There was no NESC. I think it died with Mwai Kibaki.
But no, he didn't. I have not been degazetted. I'm still.
Yes,
he's still a member. I was never degazetted on NESC.
It is dysfunctional.
It's dysfunctional.
Yeah, that's the word.
It's dysfunctional.
But he died from 2013 when Jubilee came to power.
They didn't see the value.
You remember the red tie and white shirt? Yeah, he died after that.
and I think that's quite important because cross-generational discipline
right,
that you're talking about is extremely, extremely important. South Korea, 1965, 1967. President Park realizes that South Korea is not going to develop until they go and bring all the Korean doctors and professors and engineers that are all over the world. So what did he do? He did what we call an intentional reverse brain drain. So when they went to him and they told him, Mr. President, you don't have an MIT in Seoul.
In Seoul,
Okay? We don't have any of our Ivy League schools in the US where we are teaching and we are doing all this science, technology stuff. We don't have it here. That's how the Korea Institute of Technology was born, out of that. And because of that drive and the cross-fertilization of ideas from Koreans coming back and those who are inside and government support, within 23 years, Korea was a developed country. That tells you about the intentionality of government.
And the thing you're making there is very interesting, because one space we probably need to watch is India.
I was just, that was
the simple reverse brain drain.
Yeah. And what happened is not sending people there so they are drivers in Germany of buses.
Yeah.
You intentionally tell them, go, study, and come back.
China
did
the same thing.
That's it.
Singapore. India has a Ministry of Diaspora Affairs.
Yes, they do.
A full ministry.
Yes, they do. And you remember
So
Donald Trump. You remember Donald Trump. You remember Donald Trump complaining when he became president. There are too many Chinese PhD students in American Ivy League universities of science and technology, because the government did that deliberately. At one time, almost 65% of scientists within American universities were Chinese. They finish, they go back. They finish, they go back. It has to be a deliberate effort by government as a national policy, which transcends generations of politicians. And the problem is, we have this 10 years of this individual, then they say, screw up everything else everybody was doing, and then they start their own. We start every 5 to 10 years. We cannot do that. It's
There's no continuity.
There's no
Even with
continuity.
legislations and the bills as
Clever
well.
man he is, you see. He's got continuity in Uganda.
What have you been given by Museveni? A piece of land?
It's the same as Kagame and Shem.
Yes, I think so. But for some reason, actually, you're right, and you go for Uganda, and it's very interesting whether there is really a correlation between being hard in terms of politics and development, and was voted one of the best investment in Africa in Dubai in March.
Uganda.
Uganda. And the same you go for, you look at the political leadership. How is it? And is it for growth, or despite all is happening, you actually go there and see growth in that country? Right. And one time is interesting, he was saying that meeting, there was this guy from Canada, he's mining between Tanzania and Uganda, and he's being asked, na hii maji unatumia inatoka wapi? You know? Na hii stima unatumia inatoka wapi? Inatoka Canada, or is coming from Uganda? Very interesting question, and that actually deliberately, it was given to a Tanzanian and a Ugandan farmer.
And is that deliberate in nature?
Yeah, but given the picture that you're dialing us back into history at the World Bank with the structural adjustment program, I was just wondering, looking at this article that we have today in the Standard, if we look at it, my director will just pick it up in full so that we can read it. It says, World Bank warns Ruto that tax plans will disrupt business. Kenya bracing for tax hikes as state seeks to bridge budget deficit. Critics say excessive taxation will kill already struggling businesses.
Correct.
Right, that is, you have it there?
Page 7.
Page 7.
Page 7 of the
Page 7,
Standard.
yes. And it says the government isn't collecting as much revenue as planned, making fiscal consolidation harder. This is compounded by unrealistic revenue forecasting or overly optimistic revenue projections, which can lead to unrealistic spending plans, the World Bank has warned, according to their 29th edition, where you were talking about the Kenya Economic Update, that you were there yesterday, you and...
we were sleeping there.
You were sleeping.
We weren't, but you know, we might as well have been.
Yeah. So when they're warning, and at the same time the people were talking about the austerity measures that you're saying, this is being, pushed, is a World Bank who is really pushing the envelope. So is this just for the public gallery? Why are they warning at the same time putting these stiff measures?
You see, I
fail to understand.
I've looked at this.
Yes.
The problem with a politically driven economic development mindset is this. We're in a hurry to do so many things within a very short period of time because you're trying to prove something to somebody, because whatever they're going to give us will give us a platform to do the next thing that we need to do. And that's how the sequence of this is going.
It's about re-election.
We're in a hurry to get things done.
why the
And
democracy-
also, the U.S. ambassador said this about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
She said taxation is okay, every country taxes, but you don't tax everything at the same time. She was very clear. She was on Jeff Koinange about 3 or 4 weeks ago. You don't tax everything at the same time. In other words, what the World Bank is also telling us, we understand you're trying to impress what we are trying to get you to do, but don't do it.
Don't overplay your hand.
At the same time, so that the whole thing is going to collapse. You have 3 million Kenyans who have taxation from left to right. Now, and I think people think they go like, oh, we haven't taxed that one. Okay, we can tax that one. Then you go like, you're probably having a discussion with your kids in the evening. We haven't taxed that one. We do that one. You can't do that because the whole thing is going to collapse at one time. At some point, it will collapse.
But there's something you are saying we should not forget as we go to the break. I can hear
the music is up, yes, sir.
But if you do the graph from the 60s and you come to 82, 83, structural adjustment is actually repeating itself as we talk.
It is.
The graph is showing it.
Yeah.
And why? IMF has given certain conditions. Those are the structure we are talking about. Yeah.
So I looked at them yesterday. There are 7 of them.
It's a lie because what this was all about, moving from HDA, is it a high dependent unit? You remember we were told that IMF is to move from HDA to ICU, but never up to the ward. Never to the ward.
It vacillates between the two.
Yes. It's repeating itself.
Which goes back to what Museveni keeps on saying. Sustainable development. You cannot be in a sustainable development for 65 years. Somebody has to graduate to an
to the ward.
To the ward.
Unsustainable.
And that's McPhee.
Let's take a short break.
You know, there's a course I'm taking. That course is global economics and sustainable development. It is also what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. As we take a short break right now, I know, Prof, I was just also listening to that clip that was being shared of, the chair of the Finance Committee saying that if things are really tough here with the taxation, why couldn't you go and set up in Uganda? And then you can export to Kenya.
The fourth largest.
Can we take a short break, Dr. McPhee? Then we circle back with that. So go back to Uganda, where at least it seems the business environment is very conducive, then export to Kenya. Chair of the Finance Committee, is an option, right? Well, let us look at that. We circle back with more. Don't go away. You're watching Sokoni on Morning Pride.